worked on lead climbing, so yeah, you're talking about that fall training and that. I've seen some people do that. I mean, it's a good idea, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I'm still like hesitant to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just gotta go for it. And I mean, most of the time, it's like you're gonna be fine, but it's all in your head, you know. And then you see like, unlike the able-bodied competitors, like they're taking huge whips, like in their draw, like the last clip that they're attached to is like way out to the side, and so it's like they're taking like big falls. So
Well, Ethan, I just wanted to say welcome to the Wild Heart Athletics podcast, and I appreciate you coming on this evening and hang out with us and chat and for us to learn all about you. And I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us about yourself.
yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Ethan. I'm a paraclimbing competitor. I climb for the United States. I've been competing for 3 years now in the AL2 category. So that's the single leg climbers. I'm from Seattle, Washington. Been climbing for around 7 or 8 years. I've been loving it since.
That's awesome, man. And I know we were talking a little bit before, but I'm really curious, like, what is it about rock climbing that, or like, what do you think is the greatest aspect of rock climbing? And like, how has that sport really impacted your life?
I think what really got me hooked is the idea that like all the routes have like an end to them. Because before I started climbing, I wasn't actually like that athletic, or I didn't do much sports. But climbing, because you have the top of the wall, the end, the final hold. So you have these goals in mind when you're climbing, and it makes uh, it gives you that like that rush when when you finish it, versus like if you're doing weightlifting, it can be slightly less exciting for me, at least. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna lift this weight a few more reps. To me, it's not quite as exciting, but yeah, when you finish the route, it's very satisfying and you feel accomplished. So that's what really gets me going on climbing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I get really bored when I have to go to the weight room and train. It's just not as entertaining as like mountain biking or climbing and skiing or snowboarding. So I'm right there with you on that. So how's it kind of impacted your life? I mean, you mentioned that you get kind of that internal validation and like, you get that immediate feedback of success when you get to the top of the climb. So has climbing kind of impacted your life? And I ask that because, I always say, and I say it with others too, is climbing really changed my life. And so I'm just curious if it's kind of been like that same thing for you.
I mean, yeah, my life has definitely changed a ton since before climbing and after. I mean, I've met a lot of really cool people at the gym. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who we've also talked about at climbing. Community is like a huge thing in climbing. You're working on something together. So even if you've never met this person before, you can chat with them and you talk about beta and all of that. So climbing is a very welcoming sport. Yeah, it's very easy to become friends with someone who you've never seen before. And yeah, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like, yeah, it's like gotten me outside. It's gotten me, actually, I say outside, like outside of my room. I don't do a lot of outdoor climbing. Might catch some flack for that, but I really enjoy indoor climbing a lot more than outdoor. I've gone outdoor a few times, but my joy is on the plastic holds. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's gotten me like to do more exercise, and yeah, it's gotten me out of my room. So it's changed a lot.
It's gotten you out of your room. That's the main thing, getting you a little bit outside. No, we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
give you slack if you don't climb outside. That's all right. I enjoy the gym too. You got the good atmosphere. Like you said, it's the community, and you were telling me earlier that you went to Worlds and you won gold. And I'd love to kind of hear that story this year when you went to Innsbruck, and then maybe kind of talk about like leading up to that. What were you thinking? What was your training like?
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten silver medal quite a few times. I think like 3 or 4 times I've gotten second. So it's like been so close, and especially at Salt Lake, I that was the first time I had finished. So I'll go over like the competition style because like first day we have our qualifications. So we climb 2 routes, and that determines our seeding going into finals. And so that was the first time where I seeded into like I was in the top seed, and there's a lot of pressure because I was like, okay, like maybe this is the one. I ended up making some fumbles along the climb that really cost me in Salt Lake. So I ended up coming second, which that was definitely a bit of a bummer for me. And so I was like, okay, like we gotta keep going. So Innsbruck, I would say is definitely even more challenging because a lot of the European climbers don't come to Salt Lake just because the travel, it's so much farther and more expensive for them. So yeah, Innsbruck has a lot more European climbers, and they're like extremely strong. And so the competition level is even higher there. And again in qualifications, I ended up seeding first, so there was a lot of pressure on me, and I just ended up climbing to my potential and ended up snagging the gold. So I'm very happy with that.
So you mentioned, you felt like kind of the pressure to do really good because you got, first place. And how do you handle pressure and stuff like that? Do you have like a pre-competition ritual when you kind of like calm your nerves and stuff like that?
Yeah, isolation is a really interesting thing. I mean, you're in there for a few hours sometimes. Especially our group tends to go in the later half, so you might be in there for like 2 or 3 hours just hanging out. Um, yeah, I definitely think it's different for each person. I mean, some people are very relaxed, or they're just hanging out, chatting, or like playing on the walls. I tend to, I tend to like go off by myself and kind of like at Innsbruck in particular. I was like laying just down on the mat, just like looking at the ceiling, just trying to zone out a lot and just stay in my own bubble, not really chatting too much unless I needed to. Yeah, I was pretty just trying to stay focused and not try to distract myself. I know I've seen some people read or like do other things, and I mean I do enjoy reading, but I feel like your nerves are so high, like you can't like, for me at least, I would have trouble focusing on something else when there's like this huge event that you're at right now, and like so I just try to like keep the breathing and stay locked in.
Yeah, could you elaborate on like what isolation is? 'Cause I'm sure there's some people out there that probably aren't fully aware of like, when it comes to climbing competitions and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So for the first day in qualifications, we get videos of the climbs. So we have 2 climbs, and we get videos of those. We can see the route setters do them, and we also get to observe the routes themselves. Like so you may climb at like noon that day or something, and so you can show up at like 10 or 11, and you can just like stare at the route and plan out your beta. But for finals, you are not allowed to see the route until your observation period. So everyone gets like put into like an isolation zone, so you can't talk to anyone. Your phone is taken away. Any electronic device that like can communicate with the outside is like taken away. And then you're given, I believe it's 5 minutes, and you're pulled out, and you get to view your route for 5 minutes. All the climbers, and so that's the point where you get to plan out your beta and talk it out with your other competitors. And then after those 5 minutes, you get shuffled back into the isolation zone, and you do not get to watch any of your other competitors climb. So you have to like make sure you have your beta or be ready to adapt. And so you're in this isolation zone for quite some time, like warming up, or you could talk to other competitors or your coaches.
I mean, yeah, thanks for that breakdown. That's a new one. I know you guys got a couple minutes, but 5 minutes. So what is do you have any like strategies that you try to incorporate when it comes to that? Like, yeah, you get the videos of the climbs for the other stuff, but when it comes to like the finals, you're like, I only have 5 minutes. So how do you kind of navigate that? And are there specific strategies you've kind of developed?
Uh, I mean, it's definitely a skill, like being able to memorize the route or recognizing what's important and what's not. Generally, I try to look for, like this high intensity part, like, okay, this looks really hard, or the confusing part, like, okay, you're trying to like mimic the moves with your hands. You're like, okay, like I'm going to bump here or cross here. That's definitely like what you're looking for. and then possible like rest spots. Like, okay, like if I can get here, I can shake out a little bit. Um, yeah, there's a lot you have to take in 5 minutes, especially like finding holds too, because a lot of times in these competition routes, there's a lot of like extra bolt-ons that go on top of like large macro holds. And so finding those and making sure you're aware of those prior to being on the wall is really key. I think, yeah, that's
Yeah.
about.
Find those like tricky little holds where they,
Mm-hmm.
if you get a tricky spot. I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, you obviously won first, so you're a really strong climber. We can go ahead and say that, and you're doing really well. So, what's kind of like your weekly routine, or when it comes to training? And, do you add in some like strength and conditioning? Do you have a coach like some of these other climbers, or if you kind of just got into it? How long have you been in climbing? I'm just kind of curious how everything goes for you.
Yeah, I've been competing for 3 years. I think the first year I didn't really work with any coach because I didn't know what to expect. But I am working with someone now, and he kind of puts together like the weight training, usually the plan, or like the specific type of climbing. So like I don't know, maybe I'm like projecting more this week or these few months, and then some months I may be like doing more endurance training or power endurance training, and yeah, he'll decide what type of weights I'm doing. So if I'm doing like weighted pull-ups, or if I'm doing, I don't know, dips or bench or etc. Usually they're pretty stacked plans, and I honestly don't get to all of it because it's a lot usually. So I try to do my best, but he puts together pretty difficult plans, and it's like sometimes you want to climb for fun, so you just climb for fun. I'm like, okay, I'll get to this like tomorrow or something. I don't know, but
No, I think that's a fair assessment too. And I kind of like that you mentioned the part where you want to climb for fun. I've noticed that, especially too, when I had a period of where I was training to get stronger for climbing, it seems like sometimes training can really suck the fun out of climbing. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
yeah, there's some endurance practices where we do. I don't know what he calls it, but it's just like 20 minutes of straight climbing. Like it's on a lead wall. So we'll set a timer and you'll just do laps. You'll go to the top, you'll pull the rope back down, you'll get straight on, and you'll go for 20 minutes straight. And it is just grueling and just miserable. Like your forms are so blasted. Yeah, it's very exhausting. Yeah, but it's all part of the grind.
I guess you guys should get that forearm pump that the climbers get just
Mm,
because all that lactate that gets built up in there from all the movement.
mm,
It's,
yeah,
it's always fun.
that's one way to put it.
Yeah. So, given the fact that you're training pretty hard, it sounds like, do you train year round, and then how do you kind of implement like recovery, and then are you really particular about nutrition, or are you kind of just like, I can eat whatever?
Yeah, usually I'm on the walls 4 days a week, usually around like probably like 3 hours per session, maybe four. If you include like weights, then it can push it to four sometimes. In terms of like recovery, I mean, yeah, I only climb 2 days in a row per week. So usually I'm getting at least one day of rest. So I am getting like some recovery. I mean, even like usually I climb on Sundays, but last Sunday, or I guess like yesterday, I was like really tired. I don't know, my brain was just off, and I was like, okay. Usually I don't take days off, even when I'm tired. I'm just like, you gotta follow the discipline. You gotta get the training, because there's that little voice in your head. You're like, oh, like
Yeah.
if I don't go, I'm gonna get like super weak, or I'm gonna lose everything. But I don't know. Yesterday I was feeling particularly tired, and I was like, okay, we're gonna pump the brakes a little. We'll give you some rest here. Um, in terms of like off season and on season, I'd say like I was kind of resting during like July, and when I say rest, like just not being as hard on myself in terms of like doing the weight training. I'll still like go to the gym around like 4 days a week, but maybe I'm not doing like the 4x4s, or I'm not doing like the laps. You're still going to keep the fitness, but the goal isn't to like get super strong. It's just like maintain your enjoyment for climbing, and yeah, stuff like that.
Right, because that's around that competition time, right? Because I think it's what Salt Lake World Cup is Mayish, I thought, and then
Yeah, Salt Lake is usually in May. Innsbruck is usually in June. We do have one more in Italy this September, but I won't be attending that one. A little bit of a bummer, but that's gonna be. I'm definitely gonna be watching the VOD for that one. Yeah, I'm excited.
yeah, I was talking to Morgan and Caleb, and they were telling me a little bit about that. You guys got that extra one added in Italy, so I'm like, that's really cool.
Hmm.
Enjoying that, and then now the newest addition is climbing is going to be in the Paralympics for 2028. So I'm sure you're stoked and excited for that.
Yeah, especially with, I mean, the Olympics just ended, and so you're watching those climbers, and it's, I mean, the venues are super beautiful and they're amazing. And so yeah, it's very exciting to have paraclimbing in the Paralympics. So that's definitely the goal right now. Yeah, train for that.
Okay, so you guys, that so that's your goal in the future is try to get into the Paralympics.
Yeah, most definitely. That's yes.
I gotcha. Well, that's incredible, man. I mean, that's a really good goal to do, and especially, how old are you?
26, so I'll be 30, which isn't too bad. I
Uh,
mean, like Jakob Schubert, I think it was 33 this Paralymp or this Olympics,
hmm.
and a lot of my competitors are around like 30s, and they're like still incredibly strong. Like I mean, I know there's like some who are other climbers in other categories who are like 40s or 50s, and I mean they are still like incredibly strong. Like I don't know, your tendons just get really like sturdy and strong, and you can just keep going. And it's not like bouldering where you're not like throwing yourself at problems. It's less dynamic. So I mean, even though you're older, you can still like your endurance is like super high, so you can still climb really well.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing you pointed out too, like bouldering versus like ropes climbing. So, like, for those that maybe don't understand the sub disciplines of climbing, you have rope climbing, which you could, equate to like an endurance style training, and then you have bouldering, which is really, powerful strength moves, like a strength combined like that. Or you could just maybe say sprinting and then long endurance running is probably the easiest correlation for that. Do you have a like favorite subdiscipline, or are you kind of like an all around climber and just enjoy it all?
I originally started out bouldering for actually the only reason why I started doing ropes is because of competition climbing. Like I was like interested in it a little bit, but I don't know. There's like the learning curve, which isn't really that much of a learning curve. It's very easy to top rope, and then lead belaying doesn't take a whole ton of like teaching to learn, anyways. But it was still a barrier of entry for me, and I like just didn't want to invest the time into watching a YouTube video on how to belay and stuff. So I just, and also you need a partner, which takes more planning to do. So I pretty much bouldered for like the first like 4 or 5 years, and then like I think I remember this. Like I learned how to like top rope belay in like December. So our competition originally, when I first competed, was in March, and I like learned how to top rope climb in like December, and then I learned how to lead climb in like January, and then yeah, I like competed in like top and like we call it lead, even though we're not clipping. Um, yeah, and I competed in March as a lead climber. Yeah.
Oh, that's good, man. I mean, and like, but like you said, you already had that experience too, and like you have those other community members that can help you out and teach you stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's the same figure eight knot you use for top row that you use for lead. And
Mm-hmm.
so I know you were talking about in the Paralympics, kind of they have like the modified lead where you do have the top rope and then the lead rope. But I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
do you lead climb like traditional lead climb when out of competitions at like your local gym?
Yeah, I do, especially because a lot of our routes, in particular for the AL2 climbers, they like to put us on an overhang a lot because yeah, we have both of our hands, but we're yeah missing one of our legs, so we have we still have like a lot of power, and so they tend to put us on overhang. And so to train that, commercial gyms don't put top ropes on like overhang areas because it's like risky. Because if a climber is hooked up to a top rope and they're low to the ground, they will swing out because it's attached like high above, and they will like potentially hit the ground, or they could hit someone else. And so, yeah, to train the overhang, you have to do lead climbing, and that's why we have two ropes hooked up to us when we do compete, because we have one that's hooked up to around like a third of the way up or maybe halfway up. So that way, if we fall early, it kind of catches us, so we don't fall all the way out, and like it's not as much of a hazard. But to answer your question on which I prefer, I'm gonna go with bouldering, just because I mean the move's gonna be pretty awesome. And when you're lead climbing and you're super pumped and really tired, like it's not really an enjoyable feeling. You're like shaking out on this like bad hold, and you're just like, I am so tired right now. So I don't particularly envy that feeling. So I'll go with bouldering.
That's fair. I like them both. So I'm curious, like, do you have a really good like lead climbing head? Like, are you afraid of falling, or what was like the first time you did a lead fall? How was that?
Yeah, lead climb falling. It's definitely an intimidating thing. Especially, I think part of the hesitancy for me is like having the prosthetic, because it doesn't absorb, like when you fall and you swing out into the wall, it doesn't absorb like the shock as much when your legs are colliding with the wall. So that's like one concern that I have. So I try to be like careful about my falls, and I think one thing in particular I need to do is just like take falls like before I start getting on the hard routes, so it's not in my head like when I'm on the hard fall, and I'm not like, oh crap, I'm gonna fall here, or like. So yeah, lead falling, yeah, it's intimidating. Need to get used to that. That's something I'd work on.
Yeah, have you ever had I think they call it the Presley leg, where your leg just like shakes because you're about to
Mhm.
fall, and you're like, oh
Oh yeah,
no, that's the
yeah,
worst.
yeah.
So you worked on lead climbing. So yeah, you're talking about that fall training, and that I've seen some people do that. I mean, it's a good idea, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I'm still like hesitant to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just gotta go for it. And I mean, most of the time, it's like you're gonna be fine, but it's all in your head. And then you see like on like the able-bodied competitors, like they're taking huge, huge whips, like in their draw, like the last clip that they're attached to is like way out to the side, and so it's like they're taking like, yeah, big falls. So most of
Yeah,
the time, yeah, you're good.
especially the competition falls. But I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
also just it's crazy because it's a different belay style too. Because I went to a course where USAA Climbing was doing competition
Mm-hmm.
belays, and I went and like what they were wanting us to do, and I was like, I don't feel safe. This
Mm-hmm.
is they're like, yeah, they have all this slack out and just run into the wall when they fall.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that. It's
Mm-hmm.
very different, especially like when you're climbing outside and stuff like that, and you don't want to hit a rock on the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Totally.
that's really cool. So, I know you mentioned that you're more of a plastic climber and you like to go indoors, but when you have ventured outside, what was like your experience and was there some local areas near you that you kind of venture to still?
I mean, being in Washington, yeah, we do have a lot of outdoor climbing, and it can be like maybe 30-minute drive, sometimes more if you're going farther out. Um, it's not too bad. I mean, maybe like once a year I'll do it, or twice a year. But I think what holds me from doing it is like the drive. I mean, because yeah, it's a while, and it's what is it called when you walk up to your route? I forget what that's called. The
Oh, the
yeah,
approach or whatever.
yeah, the
Yeah.
approach. Yeah, so sometimes the approaches can be like 20 minutes of walking with your, you got your crash pads.
Yeah.
So it's brutal. Usually, I mean, I think when you go outside, it's more of a holistic experience. You're not going there like for climbing. I mean, you are, but like it's the idea of like, you're in nature or you're with your friends, or you got your dog or whatever, like, or like, yeah, be outside. It's a whole, yeah, it's a whole event type of thing. You're not just going there to like send. Even though, I mean, you are, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Hopefully, this what I'm saying makes sense. Like, there's more than just climbing when you go outside, and it tends to take up like the entire day. You drive out there and then you come back and you're just totally blasted when you come back. Versus for me, like I like going to the gym. Like you spend a few hours there and you come back, and then you're still at home. So
Nah, yeah, sometimes climbing outside can be a whole day adventure. And some of them we do. So there's some multi pitching near us, which is really interesting. But like I said, it's like a 3 hour drive. So you get up early, get there. If you want to beat the crowd, you want to be at the wall at like 7:30. So you're up really early, and then depending on how much you want to climb, you might not be done till 5, maybe 4 at the earliest. And you're like, I got to drive home and I got to eat dinner.
exactly, it's a whole thing. I mean, props to people who do that every weekend because, like, wow, I would not be able to.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's incredible, but it is nice. Yeah, going every now and then, you're like, okay, this is nice. I can appreciate this. But I couldn't go more than a few times. Yeah, I enjoy my plastic climbing.
Hey, that's fair. We all got our likes, but like you said too, though, what's interesting and what's nice about the holistic climbing when you go outside is it is that community base, and you're getting one time outside, but then two, it's just a more like um, intimate community setting where you're outside in like a small group, and that usually helps.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because like you said, as you climb and you train, then you're at the gym, you have a purpose, but outside is just complete free all. It's just having fun.
Hmm.
So being in Seattle, Washington, other than climbing, do you have any like other like hidden talents or like other hobbies that you like to indulge in?
Uh, Nothing that's like in particular to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, yeah, I spend a lot of time at the gym, and it takes up, yeah, any free time that I have usually. Um, so I'm pretty much just fully dedicated to climbing at this moment.
All right. Is it about nothing else? Like you don't try getting into mountain biking or anything like that, or you play video games a lot? Do you read a lot?
Yeah, I do play some games. I do read a little bit. I've tried mountain biking. I did some trail biking like a few years back. I mean, that's definitely fun. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's pretty cool though. I like trail biking, or I haven't gotten like actual downhill biking in a while, but I mean, I enjoy sailing. I used to do sailing a lot when I was younger. Um,
Oh, well, tell me
so
about
I've been,
that. How was that? I've never talked to someone. I've like know people that that use sailboats and go sailing.
mhm.
So how'd you get into that? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I did like small, like dinghy boats. So these are like 1 or 2 man boats. They're probably around like 15 feet, give or take a few feet. I started, yeah, it was just like a summer camp. Probably started around like 8 or 9, and yeah, I enjoyed it, so I just kept doing it. Uh, yeah, sailing's fun.
Did you get into like racing or anything, or no?
I did some racing. I think I did for 2 years. Yeah, it's a lot of like reading. You have to read the wind and like see like, okay, like, and there's rules about like right of way in turn, like, so because you're all racing on the same course, and it's not like running where you have a track. Like you're all on the same course and it's just open field. So there's like rules about like who has the right of way and who has to like get out of your way. So it's a lot of that, and like I say like abusing, but like you're supposed to like abuse it. And, you use your right of way over someone else to force them off the course that they want.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious. Do you think there could be, or is there a possibility of like a crossover of like learning stuff in sailing and then applying it to rock climbing, and then vice versa, stuff you maybe learned in rock climbing you could apply to sailing?
Mm, huh. Maybe. I've never actually thought about that. When I competed, I was probably in like high school, definitely like a few years before I started climbing. Yeah, I'd have to think about that if any of the tactics could apply there. I mean, probably like I kind of talked about like reading the wind. I mean, similarly to reading a route, like that's just there's some crossover there, but I'd have to think about that more to nail something down.
I gotcha. Have you ever tried now did you do, because you said you did like, smaller boats and stuff, and so were you kind of closer to land, and did you do any like way out in the ocean too, or no?
No, these are all like you're within like a few hundred feet of shore. I haven't done anything like open ocean or anything like that.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty intimidating, but
It'd be different. I'm curious what it's like. I've never been on a sailboat. I've watched people, and we got a lake here near where I live, and people
mhm,
will take it out. But I'm like, it's not the same as getting it out where you're at, I'm sure.
mhm.
Hmm. So, what's the greatest part about living in Seattle? Because like I've only kind of my experience with Seattle was basically walking. I got in the airport, rode the tram in, then walked from the tram to the ferries, and then went out to
Mhm.
I think it's Mount Olympus State Park that's out in one of the islands out there, and did some backpacking.
Yeah,
So
nice.
what's the greatest thing about Seattle, Washington, in your opinion?
In my opinion, okay, hmm. I'd say the general consensus is like, it's very beautiful here. You have the mountains, it's very green, a lot of trees. Um, yeah, it's very pretty being here. And I haven't visited too many other cities, or like, like you said, you go to the airport maybe, and then you spend time at the airport, and then you just like fly out to somewhere, wherever you're going. So you don't actually get to see many of the cities. So it's hard for me to compare it to. I mean, Innsbruck is like gorgeous. Like it's similar to Seattle, but like you're even more tucked into the mountains. And yeah, it's super green there. Innsbruck is, yeah, any climber or anyone, yeah, who's been to Innsbruck will probably tell you that it's a gorgeous place. But what do I like most about Seattle? I mean, it's probably a similar answer. Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, you have the water, you have the mountains, so you really have a lot of sports and things available to you. Yeah.
Did you ever like imagine like when you first got into climbing that you would like have all these travel experiences and like be able to see places like Innsbruck?
Definitely not. I remember telling my mom about so the gym in Innsbruck is called like the Klettner Zentrum, and I remember like I think before I started competing, I like showed my mom the gym because I saw a video about the gym and I was like, oh, like it'd be really cool to like travel here and like climb at this gym because it's like a world renowned gym, and it's in this beautiful place. Like it'd be really cool to go here, and that was, yeah, before I started competing, and then here I am. Like I've been there twice now, and it's super cool. I was gonna say something else. I remember. Oh, I was gonna talk about how I found out about competing
Yeah,
because
let's hear it.
uh, I never like knew about like paraclimbing, and the only reason I found out about it was because I met someone and they were like, "Oh, like because I'm not big on social media, and I didn't have an Instagram account at that time, and they're like, like people make like Instagram accounts like dedicated to like climbing videos, or like they just post videos of them climbing. They're like, you should try it, or you can like watch other people climb. And I was like, okay, I could give this a shot. And that's how I got started getting introduced into like competitive climbing, not just like paraclimbing, but the able-bodied circuit as well. And then I remember like seeing a USA climbing like story, and they were like, oh, we're having, I think they had, don't quote me on this, but I think they had a World Cup in like LA like 3 or 4 years ago. And I just remember their story being like, oh, like we're having the paraclimbing like World Cup soon. And I was like, okay, well, that's really cool. And at that time, I didn't like think about competing at all. I was like, these guys are probably like way above me, or I didn't know about the process at all. But eventually I like looked into it and I was like, oh, like maybe I should try this. And I just ended up registering, and then here I am.
Isn't it crazy how like you just try like you just kind of say yes to an opportunity, and then like it turns out to be like one of the most incredible things because like you said you went to that place because I think you were right. I think it was in LA because I talked to Seamus one time and he was telling
Hmm.
me that was his first time too was they had something in LA and that's where he went and kind of got his first taste of competition. And so, like, but then, like I said, look at you now. Like, you've gone to Innsbruck, you've done all these incredible things, and you just won gold, which is incredible. I mean, that's awesome.
Hmm.
All these experiences.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'd be really cool. Yeah, I'm always wondering how like we can get more people in, or like, because I feel like I'm like a prime target to like compete. I mean, I'm very competitive, and I'm just like, okay, how do we get more people into paraclimbing? Because yeah, the more people we have, and like the bigger groups, more competitive. You want the sport to grow. So I'm like, okay, how do we like get more, especially like yeah, with uh, like disabled folks? Like you have to introduce like how do you introduce sports to them, and or like being athletic if they weren't athletic beforehand, or if they were athletic, like how it's a whole thing.
Yeah, you bring up like a really interesting point that I think it would be great to talk about that too, right? Like, one raising that awareness for adaptive athletics in general, whether it be climbing, outdoor sports, running, like there's other stuff out there. But something I love that you mentioned, like you said, people that maybe were not athletic in like high school or sport, they just really didn't have any interest. And I feel like that climbing is one of very few sports that really is good for people like that. And that's not, talking down to people that weren't athletes as kids. There's nothing wrong with having no interest in sports, but I think what's great about climbing is it's very easy to pick up. It's very intuitive, just like yoga is very intuitive and gives you that body awareness. But what's the added benefits, like we've talked about and you've experienced it, is the community aspects. And then within that community, you get that like support, right? Because I'm sure you go to those competitions, and yes, like you said, you're competitive and you want to win, but at the same time you're also going to root on those other individuals that have gotten to where they're at, and you're going to root them on during their performance because that's just what you do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, especially the rooting on, like watching the other competitors, like yeah, take on their routes. It is really inspiring, especially like the blind climbers are incredible. Like it's yeah, it's super cool watching them, especially when like hearing the callers like call out like where the holds are and stuff. I yeah, that's super impressive. One thing, oh, I remember, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Craig DiMartino, but he's a AAL2 climber as well from the United States. He was like one of the pioneers for like, I actually, I don't know, but like he was definitely like one of the first like AL2 climbers that I was familiar with. And I remember someone at the gym telling me about him, and I was like, I'm not sure who this is. And I looked him up, and I mean, I don't know his backstory, so I can't say, but I know he's done like a bunch of cool things, and he does a lot of like adaptive programs for like paraclimbing. And one thing that in particular stuck out to me was like, especially with people with disabilities, or they may have like a lot of pain or just like hardship. And when you put them on the wall, like it's hard to think about that hardship when you're on the wall and you're so focused like on climbing in that moment. And so he talks about how like during those moments when they're on the wall, they're just like locked in on climbing and getting to the top or doing their best. And you can like take away, I guess, like that hardship for just a few moments, and they can like yeah, enjoy climbing at least for those few moments.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think you hit that right on the head. Is when you're on that wall, you're focused on getting to the top, so you have that very external focus. It's at the forefront of your mind. Everything else kind of disappears, and a lot of climbers I've talked to, I'm sure you kind of have had that same sensation is like when you're on the wall, that's all you think about, and that's what's really great about it. It's like a move moving meditation in a way.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
What was that guy's name again? Craig.
Craig DiMartino.
Okay.
Yeah, I know he used to compete for the United States, and he's done a whole bunch of things. I think he's done like a whole bunch of outdoor climbing, and yeah, he does a bunch of clinics for adaptive paraclimbing. So I definitely look up to him as an inspiration, and I have reached out to him. I think when I originally started climbing, because one of the things that I ran into was like frustration with um, like being an amputee. You're like, okay, like some of these moves are just like way too hard, or like I can't do this left leg move because I'm a left leg amputee. It's like some of these left leg moves, that requires me to like step on it, or I don't know, do something that's like very uncomfortable, or I just can't like weight it well enough. And so I definitely had some frustration there. So I reached out to him one time, and he had mentioned that sometimes he still runs into the issue of like frustration, and it's yeah something you really have to like work on and try to accept.
How's that process been for you? Kind of like learning with that adaptation and stuff. Are you still working on it, and things have gotten a little bit better? Or do you think that will kind of always still kind of be there?
I definitely have gotten better about it. I think when it's a move, I've reflected about like when does it make me frustrated, and I think it happens in moves that are like just on the edge of doable. Because if it's so like left leg focused that I like just cannot do it at all, I'm like, okay, like this is way out of my zone. Like I can't do this at all. But when it's a left leg move that I can like, where I like know I can like just barely do it, or like I'm like, oh, like if I didn't have a prosthetic, then I would just easily get past this move. I think it's one of those edge cases where I was like, okay, I can probably do this, but it's gonna like it's just so like just wish like I could articulate my ankle in this spot, and then it'd be so much easier. I think that's what can get me sometimes.
Yeah, and then like you said, you have that frustration, but I think what's cool is like you said, you could reach out to Craig, and you have those people that have that understanding and can give you those insights to maybe okay, we'll try this or try that.
Hmm.
Has there been like anybody else in the kind of climbing community that's really been an inspiration to you, or that you kind of look up to, or maybe has like mentored you in a way?
Definitely Ronnie. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ronnie, but I actually think he's like just finished competing with the United States. He's been competing for a number of years now. He's an incredibly strong climber, super cool dude. He does a lot of outdoor climbing as well. But when I first started, yeah, I definitely like look up to him as well as yeah being an incredible climber, and he is above the knee too, and he is like climbing really hard stuff, and it's yeah, he's very awesome.
Is Does Ronnie make prosthetics?
Yes, yes, he
Okay,
does.
I've heard of him because Morgan mentioned him. I think
Hmm.
he's out of Chattanooga, correct?
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely have to look Mr. Ronnie up. That's interesting, and that's cool. That's actually a really interesting thing too, because I talked to another adaptive athlete, and she is got her degree in making prosthetics, and so I think there's like that really unique perspective when it comes from someone like you have Ronnie and you have this other girl that have an adaptation that they're dealing with, but then they also can make prosthetics for others going through similar situations, and I think that's really cool, and that's probably something that could definitely be highlighted as well as far as like when you said raising awareness. But I thought that was just like really cool to hear about people that are doing that.
Yeah, I definitely look up to them, and yeah, I'm sure it helps tremendously in their work when they themselves are an adaptive athlete um, in making prosthetics. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of raising more awareness. So what do you think is like a what's one way we could probably maybe go about that, and like what's from an able-bodied person looking into the adaptive community, what's maybe a way we can also bridge the gap of like one understanding like where you guys are at, but then at the same time help and raise awareness? Like, what's a great way for both communities to maybe come together, and then at the same time, what's a great way to raise awareness?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's always the question. I mean, it's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, the way that I found out about it was, yeah, through social media. But then if you have like people who aren't on social media, like how do you approach those people?
Yeah.
How are they going to find out? I mean, maybe it's just like a poster board at the gym or something. I don't know. I remember when the LA announcement was made, like there were a lot of like, especially like able-bodied competitors who were like posting on their story too, and so that was really nice, like seeing them also post that and like bring more awareness. I know the IFSC like did a few posts as well, so like yeah, making people aware that yeah, like paraclimbing is a thing, and like yeah, hopefully bring more people in.
Yeah, but you brought up a interesting thing, right? Because like you said, you're not really big into social media, which that's great. Social media can not be the greatest thing in the world, but like you said, it does help get messages out there. But maybe something could be, the gyms actually hosting adaptive programs at their gym, right? Individual gyms maybe doing that. That would probably be a good start. And I don't know about you, but I know I have seen like a lot of gyms start to do that.
Yeah, you actually make a great point. Nat from the USA team actually contacted me like a few weeks ago because I have a few videos of me climbing on Instagram and like full route videos, like on the top rope.
Nice.
And so she was doing a clinic, I guess, and she asked if she could use my videos, and I was like, yeah, sure, totally. And so then she can show like the route setters, like how we climb differently versus like able bodied. But yeah, clinics is definitely something that can bring people in for sure. That's a great point.
Yeah, the clinics. Have you ever thought about maybe hosting your own clinic at your local gym?
I've never actually thought about that until now. But I mean, there's a possibility. Sometimes I like climb at the gym and I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna like find another AL2 climber just like randomly at the gym. It may have happened. I don't. I feel like I would remember if it happened, but it's happened in my brain a few times. Where I'm like, okay, like one of these times I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna see another AL2 climber like coincidentally, and it's just gonna be like, whoa. I don't know,
Hey, you never know.
but
You
yeah.
know what? I will be very amazed if in the next couple of days you see uh, that happens.
hmm Actually, I do recall now at I climb at a few different gyms, but I actually do recall seeing an AL2 climber also. Yeah, actually, yeah. Now that I think about that, that has happened. So
There we go. It's meant to be.
I actually did. It was like I approached him. He was like a older gentleman, but I was like, like there's paraclimbing competitive, or like yeah, there's competitive paraclimbing, and he's like, okay, maybe I don't know. I don't think he was going to, but I was like, this is a thing you can do if you want. But
Yeah, because I talked to Josh, and he's on the little older side, and like he's still crushing
mhm,
it too. He's doing really good. So yeah, age is just a number, but that's awesome. And at least you like went up and learned like, hey, dude, come on, let's go.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, can never have enough competitors.
yeah. Well, and I think what's an interesting thing is when you look at the Adaptive Climbers Festival, which I'm learning is all run by the adaptive climbing community, and I think that's
Mhm,
incredible, right? That everybody's coming in and you guys are taking that on yourselves, which is really good. And that the able-bodied community has nothing to do with it. You guys are running it. The clinics are run by adaptive people, and I think that's a great maybe segue into like we were talking. If you started something at your gym or whatever, that's one of the many ways to start like bringing more people into the sport. Would be a great thing.
mhm. That's definitely something for me to think about now. Now that it's on my mind. Yeah, Adapters Climbers Fest. I haven't actually been there. I mean, it's mostly because of like vacation hours, honestly, or like being pinched already because of all the competitive climbing. Um, I mean, if I had unlimited PTO, then like yeah, totally, I would go, even though it's outdoor climbing, but just being around like either adaptive climbers, it would be nice. And yeah, discussing routes with them. I think that's one thing. I mean, actually, my coach does a pretty good job at this already, which is like helping me find solutions to routes that are meant for able-bodied people, and like trying to find solutions for yourself, but being able to also talk with adaptive athletes and seeing how they solve things. I've climbed with Ronnie. He actually came out here. I don't remember when. It may have been a year or two ago, and we went outdoors. We did outdoor bouldering, and we did some lead climbing outside, which was my first lead climbing outside ever. And we did some gym climbing. And it's nice, like, yeah. And he's also the same left leg amputee as me. So it's like really nice being able to discuss beta and stuff with someone who like also understands all of the challenges that you face. Um, yeah.
Oh yeah, well, that's perfect. Like you said, you have that direct link to someone that has, a decade of experience in the arena of climbing. So, and it's like you said, it's a similar amputation. So that definitely
Mm-hmm.
helps. And I think that's a really cool thing that you're doing too, like climbing routes for, the able body that are hard, because then it forces you to like really learn how your body moves. And
Mm-hmm.
that just speaks to the incredible human body of like how adaptive we are as a species is really cool. But that's a whole another nerded out conversation for
Mm-hmm.
another time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's just so cool. Well, Ethan, man, I appreciate you coming on and just like hanging out and chatting with us. And I'm so stoked that you won gold and at Worlds this year. That's an incredible feat, and that you're just crushing it in life, it sounds like. And I can't wait to see how you do with maybe bringing up some adaptive stuff in your community. That's a really cool thing, man. And like I said, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.